It is Friday, January 9th. Let's talk PlayStation. Welcome back, everyone, to another New Game Plus episode of LTPS. As per usual, let's begin with our PS Plus Essential Reminder, which the January lineup of games is now live on PSN, so you can add those to your library. Now, going into our first news story, we have some new PS5 console covers and DualSense controller colors that are going to be available for pre-order very soon. This is the Hyperpop collection, which is a mix of colors that Sony calls Techno Red, Remix Green, and Rhythm Blue. The covers themselves appear glossy, and they'll feature a subtle hint of transparency, where the pre-orders begin January 16th, and they are launching March 12th. These are some fine colors. I don't mind them. I actually really do like the gradient style where it gets blacked out towards the top, and a slight hint of transparency is nice, but I would still really like, and I am once again asking for, a frosted blue controller, as we've seen on most home PlayStation consoles. It's something Sony has always done, and they have not offered it just yet on PlayStation 5, so that I would like to see. And also, yes, as many others are pointing out, once again, no PS5 Pro console covers. They've only done this one time, which was for Ghost of Yotei. So for some reason, they are still not offering PS5 Pro covers, which for a sort of low-volume premium console where people are probably very engaged customers and they want to buy and customize things for their console, it's kind of crazy that they still haven't done that just yet. But more so, I will still acknowledge how bizarre it was that the existing covers on the PS5 Slim, 3 out of 5 of those covers, or 3 out of 4, fit on the Pro. One of them does not. How they did not unify this between the two platforms, I genuinely don't understand that. It seems like a slam dunk thing you would do to make sure it's very easy to offer additional colors. But here we are. Pro technically doesn't have these options because one panel would not fit on any option that they do offer. Having said that, if you do want these, pre-orders are starting very soon. Moving on to CES 2026, the Consumer Electronics Show, where we have seen in years prior, during PS5 in particular, Sony will spend some time talking about PlayStation, make some announcements, and that was not true before PS5, where they kind of glossed over PlayStation. It was primarily electronics, right? So now we can watch CES. But for this year in particular, it was more about the Sony Honda Mobility Initiative, because they were showing off the production version of the Afeela, which they will be shipping to California reservation holders later this year, then ramping up production into next year, and then also showing off a new concept car, which was basically a larger version of the Afeela, so an SUV type crossover EV, which of course they're still going to be doing that stuff as well. But this presentation was primarily about the production example of that car. However, we do have some PlayStation news, which is SIE's SVP Eric Lempel took the stage to announce that yes, the Afeela will support remote play, which that was shown off during the concept versions of the presentation of the vehicle, but now they're confirming yes, it will have that for certain. And he also gave a really cool factoid about remote play, and that for the PlayStation Portal, that device now accounts for 50% of all remote play sessions compared to all other devices. So PCs, tablets, phones, which not entirely surprising. The Portal does one thing and one thing only, so if you're buying that, and a lot of people are buying it and putting in some serious hours on the device, I can see how it easily does account for pretty much half at this point compared to phones, tablets. PC's got to be nothing, I would imagine, but between phones and maybe tablets eating up a smaller chunk as well. I mean, yeah, the Portal is the first class way to do any sort of remote play from your PlayStation 5. Now, he did also confirm that for the Afeela, it will have PlayStation themed wallpapers and sounds that you can assign to the car's infotainment screens, which it's a small little thing, but it's pretty quirky and fun to see like Astrobot themed wallpapers or Gran Turismo things inside the car's giant displays. It's an EV, it's got screens everywhere and things like that, right? But most modern cars nowadays are shipping with incredibly giant sized screens, whether they're ICE or EV. But yeah, it's neat to see that. It's a crazy vehicle. It's going to be not high six figures, low six figures, and then I think high five figures for like the smaller trim levels. But they're still going to be ramping up production very slowly for that car, so it might take a while for these things to start hitting the roads for you to see them often. If you're in California, you'll probably see these things regularly by sometime next year if they do sell well. But either way, that's the PlayStation news from CES. It was primarily for a vehicle that most people will likely not really get to experience. Moving on to another update going on in the PlayStation 5 hacking and jailbreaking scene, which I didn't think we'd have another story about this so fast, but there is a separate thing going on where there's been reports of a physical PS4 game shooting up in value because of the possibility of it being used to exploit your console. So Star Wars Racer Revenge, which came out years ago from limited run, so the game is limited as far as how many copies were printed, about 8,000 something copies, but it's a PS2 emulation game that can be installed offline. So there were some headlines this past week about how a developer behind the upcoming 12.0 PS5 jailbreak said that this game would be needed, as you could break out of the emulator and run unsigned code, which might facilitate a jailbreak. Now, crucially, that's the important thing here, is that this exploit does not provide kernel access. So at this moment in time, this is primarily for anybody in the developer scene that can try to escalate access. So this is only a userland code vulnerability. It's not something where on its own it's going to jailbreak your system. So don't feel like you have to panic buy this game for $200-$300 if you want to jailbreak a PS5 that's on firmware 12.0. I mean, the safest way to always go about these things, if you're not in the scene or follow it, which I myself am not in it, the safest way to parse these stories, if you see like established organizations reporting on it, just dive right into those actual communities or follow somebody on Twitter that is actively doing these things, and they'll probably give you a better picture of what exactly is going on with that story. And also just keep a console on low firmware. Sometimes that's a luxury. You can't always do that, have a second machine or keep your primary one on a low firmware, but the best way to be prepared for jailbreaks is to always have a console that is set offline and on old firmware. Next up, we have a new patent filed by Sony Interactive Entertainment back in September 2024, and then a different version was filed even earlier back in October 2023. There might be more earlier than that. Sometimes looking through patents are an absolute pain, but this one was published and recently, well, it was published in April of last year, I think, but recently discovered and publicized, which this patent is for an AI-generated ghost player, where it describes a method for providing assistance to the player of a video game where an AI assistance engine steps in to possibly play the game for you. So it can be trained via playthroughs of other users, or it can scrap online resources like YouTube videos, and then from there it can offer granular help like provide a text prompt of what to do, maybe show button inputs, it could naturally talk to you about certain tasks, or just straight up play the game for you, which Sony has absolutely been validating and testing and researching this stuff for probably 10, 20, maybe even 30 years. We can always say that about a big organization like Sony, and that they're always R&Ding constantly. It's just that a lot of that stuff never comes out. They'll patent it, they'll protect the technologies they build, but very rarely does that stuff make it to market. And we've seen that they'll patent a lot of things over the course of LTPS, for example. I know we've covered patents where it's basically this: an AI assistant that can either control the game for you, provide in-game tips and things like that. They always want to do this stuff because it breaks down barriers of players getting into their consoles and finishing their games. They're closely monitoring gameplay hours and the retention on the console. Those are big KPIs for them internally. So the thing about this patent is that you see Gen AI, the sort of modern era of how generative AI can be trained and modeled and offer granular help. I mean, that's where it's going to be probably much more exponentially useful than anything they've ever tried to make internally, because that still requires a lot of like engineering manual input. And also today we have game help on PlayStation 5 on the Control Center via activity cards, and you can see how manual input means there's very little support. Developers have to make those activity cards with the text hints, the estimated time, the in-game videos that are saved that are in the Control Center, right? That's all on them. That's why they also did community game help as well, which was a way to sort of automate that process a little bit by using the PS5's video capturing software to auto capture things that might be based on collectibles or whatever the case is, right? But you can see that they need to automate the process a bit to try and get more use out of game help. But it's something that is a key pillar of PlayStation 5. And that's why I think for PS6, like, I know I'm going off on a tangent here, but it's like, so what Sony has said so far about PS6, rasterization taking a bit of a backseat. It's all about ray tracing, all about ML, which would go into PSSR. So PSSR 2.0, 3.0, advancing the resolution scaling there. But it's like, I'm also very curious about the user experience. What will the UI look like? That's something PlayStation always likes to do completely new every single time. And PS6, you would have to think, when they're looking for avenues of how do they make PS6 a compelling product in this marketplace, it might be the user experience. If there is some sort of console-wide AI assistant that, with proper consent from all players and how it tracks and how it's trained, that could be something that follows you from game to game and can be, again, very granular. It doesn't have to play the game for you, obviously. It can be something as simple as not going to YouTube, looking up at, even with a YouTube AI answer, it's still a matter of you don't want to have to do that. If you're right in the experience on the console, you can ask the assistant real quick, how do I accomplish this? Where's this collectible? This, that, and the fourth. It could be a massive boon to accessibility too. So this is one of those things where, as far as the Gen AI use case, assuming that's what this is modeled on, I mean, there's, I think, a lot more upside here. So, and I think it's something that would actually bring to market too. There's a reason why we never see all these patents end up coming to fruition, because they test it, validate it, and realize that it's just not going to be widely adopted, or just it doesn't end up working out. This, I read something like this and I think that sounds like a PS6 sort of user experience to me. If it will happen remains to be seen, of course. AI can be very memory intensive, which we know is an issue right now. But either way, I'll move on from the story. There was a lot to be said on this one, because Sony very much wants to get this thing going. Next up, we have a somewhat isolated example of the community really pushing back on a game coming to the PlayStation Store, and Sony was promoting it on their YouTube channel because they upload a lot of things to their channel, and it got to a point where they actually privated the video. And this happened in a way where it's this is in light of all the stuff that is published on the PlayStation Store nowadays. It's been a growing frustration with fans, either on PSN or the eShop, even Steam. I mean, there's so many things that come out nowadays, and a lot of it is just actual garbage shovelware, and also very misleading, where the key art doesn't match anything for the in-game content. The screenshots themselves might be an entirely different build of the game, or a different game entirely. I mean, there's just a lot of bad actors right now in the community. It's gotten to a point where there's, shell companies popping up left and right in all these countries, where they're probably passing around a handful of dev kits that they got that weren't deactivated or something, and so they're able to get into the PlayStation dev portal and then start submitting all this crap like crazy. And so it's become a, I don't want to say insurmountable problem, but it's a problem that has been growing and growing, and we've seen Sony try to deal with it. But it's pretty fascinating to see one example of a game like this called Ebola Village, which very clearly looks like a Resident Evil ripoff sort of game. It was clowned on right away. People were calling it out. I can't believe PlayStation is promoting this kind of game. So they private the video, which I do want to clarify. They publish so many videos. This likely happens more often than we think, but this one sort of gained a little more attention during the very slow early weeks of January. And so, I don't know, I wonder if Sony is going to get to a point, and you would think internally this is happening, but it's a matter of really taking a close look at the dev portal, the submission process, and also maybe their own store policies on if they should start rejecting certain games just based on quality. But it's how do you do that with manual human reviews, which it has to be. The second you start automating that process, you're going to reject things that should not be rejected. That's the thing I always caution about. But you have to wonder, are they seriously looking at their own policies and their own processes to make sure that maybe we should reevaluate this entire thing, because our store is getting cluttered and now we're getting called out for games like this. Moving on to the DICE Awards 2026, which is airing next month, February 12th. And this is the awards ceremony where it's more tightly focused on just strictly the awards portion, handing out awards, recognizing massive achievements in the games business. It's not a super hyper commercialized thing like the Jeff Keighley TGAs. And so for the DICE Awards 2026, we do know that the nominations are out there. Clair Obscur and Ghost of Yotei have 8 nominations each, and then it goes down to Arc Raiders and Dispatch getting 6, Blueprints has 5, and Death Stranding 2 has 4. And the Game of the Year award is down to Arc Raiders, Blueprints, Clair Obscur, Dispatch, and Ghost of Yotei. So again, this is the one award ceremony where if you're frustrated with the Jeff Keighley show, this one is often seen by many in the community as the sort of, I don't want to say real ceremony, but it's one that there's a lot of pride and appreciation for those that are recognized in this space, especially by all their peers and that particular panel. So that show will be airing February 12th. And that's actually a good segue to our next story, which is that Naughty Dog's Neil Druckmann will be presenting an award to Evan Wells, the former president of Naughty Dog, where they retired back in 2023 after 25 years. And so the Hall of Fame award from the Academy of Interactive Arts and Sciences is going to be presented by Neil to Evan Wells on during the ceremony, February 12th, which is a huge achievement. He'll be joining the ranks of some very prestigious names in the games business for doing just that, contributing massively to this industry and having a sort of knock-on effect that is permeated throughout all other studios and the business. We know Naughty Dog's effect has been massive throughout its history, and he led Naughty Dog for a very long time, so it's a huge congrats to Evan, and it'll be probably a very heartwarming moment to have Neil Druckmann be able to present it to Evan, and that'll be happening in February. Okay, let's get on with some third-party news stories, beginning with Grand Theft Auto 6, where we have a big update from a well-sourced individual. That is Bloomberg's Jason Schreier, where he was speaking on the Button Mash podcast, and he was asked directly about how he feels as far as if he's confident if the game will show up on time for its November 2026 release. And so Jason did say that based on what he last heard, the game still is not content complete, so staff are still finalizing levels and missions. He said, quote, "I don't think anyone at Rockstar could tell you with 100% certainty that they will make it out in November, but I think it feels a little bit more real than Fall 2025 did. That was never real, and even more real than May 2026 did. Even then, I think there were people, at least that I spoke to, who were skeptical of that, and I think people feel like this might be a little bit more solid." Jason went on to say that PlayStation is the main platform for this game, and Sony is probably planning their calendar around the game, trying not to release anything close to it. So when talking about something like Marvel's Wolverine, he's thinking that's probably somewhere in September, October, and I think we all kind of thought it was around that area anyway. It's similar to prior Insomniac releases, but yes, it's in Sony's best interest to not release a game near Grand Theft Auto 6, which typically Sony has never really cared where they ship their games. I mean, they do and they don't, right? It's like we've had so many weird examples where they ship something right next to another tentpole game or other third-party games, but generally speaking, it seems like Sony has not really had a problem shipping games if they're ready to be released. It's just that, in this sense, a game as massive as GTA 6, and it's all upside for Sony, that's what Jason also is implying here, is that the game's basically a PlayStation exclusive, just in the sense that hardware sales for Xbox are just exponentially down 3-4 years year over year. So PlayStation is going to sell, well, the PS5 version is going to sell just insanely well. It's the main platform. That's what Jason's getting at. And that's not accounting for any sort of possible marketing deals that Sony may or may not already have in place. Of course, historically, they've done that, so it's a strong possibility for GTA 6. Maybe they can offer a bundle right away. Who knows? We understand this game is going to be extremely successful, so it's all upside for Sony. Now, in the case of the game coming out on time, Jason wanted to clarify further that he wasn't saying the game is not going to... He's not saying that he thinks the game is going to get delayed. He's saying, I wouldn't be surprised if this is the date where it comes out on time. Just letting people know that, like, sure, it's a distinct possibility it's delayed, but it very likely could actually launch on time, as Rockstar is saying. That's the big discussion around this game, is that will we see another delay? They are perfectionists. They want to make sure this game is on their terms. It's very buttoned up, tight, complete, a solid experience. They don't, Rockstar can do a delay. They can delay this game all day, every day, as long as they make sure that the game is really going to meet expectations, to which they know the expectations are very high. Having said that, we'll keep watching GTA 6. It is going to be the biggest entertainment product launch of all time, and so we'll see if the game does indeed come out on time. Moving on to some updates from publisher Xbox Game Studios, where we were expecting a developer direct to happen later this month. Well, now that's been confirmed for January 22nd, and it's going to focus on 3 games in particular. That's Fable, Forza Horizon 6, and Beast of Reincarnation. That one is Game Freak's action RPG, where it's coming to PS5 as well. Forza Horizon 6, we know, is coming to PS5, but not day one with PC and Xbox. And then Fable is unconfirmed right now, but I can't imagine that game is not coming to PS5 at some point in time. It just depends on Playground Games' own development pipeline because they're doing Fable and Forza Horizon 6, so that's what's going on there. And it seems like there might be a rumored fourth game. Shinobi 602 mentioned that over on Reset Era, so there probably is a fourth game showing up towards the end as a little surprise, because 3 games for a developer direct does seem a little bit light there, but otherwise anything Xbox is doing nowadays, we can assume it's probably going to come to PS5 at some point in time. And so with that said, we can also move on to our next story, which was a new video game live stream. New Game Plus aired yesterday, and Xbox Game Studios did confirm that Avowed PS5 is real, so that game is finally coming over to PlayStation 5, and it's shipping February 17th. That's going to come alongside an anniversary update that includes a new Game Plus mode. There's a bunch of new races to play as, there's a new weapon type, photo mode, and more. So that game, yeah, was heavily rumored for a little bit. Nice to see the PS5 version is coming next month. Now, we also have some rumors going on in the Xbox Game Studios landscape, more so Bethesda. So in a recent post on Windows Central from Jez Corden talking about what's in the pipeline for Xbox in 2026, Jez does write that he's told a Fallout 3 remaster similar to Oblivion is on the way, as well as Fallout New Vegas. Developer Obsidian apparently has 4 new projects in the works, some big, some small. He's unsure if any of these are Fallout related, but Fallout 5, we are hearing, is also coming. They understand that game has been greenlit. So more Fallout, which with the show doing as well as it's been doing, there is a lot of upside for Xbox to probably start getting more of those out there. And with Bethesda, they said they want to try and do more shadow drops. So you would think that for Fallout 3 and possibly New Vegas, that could be a very exciting prospect, in that whenever they do announce those games, they're immediately playable right then and there. The issue is they might not come out in a perfectly fine state, so you might want to be a little bit cautious spending $40-something and jumping right into whatever they're trying to sell you in that moment. But the thing is, with Fallout New Vegas in particular, I mean, not to discredit 3, but I feel like a lot of people are very nostalgic and they love Fallout New Vegas. That's what I hear constantly, is that really is the fan favorite. But, 3 and Vegas, they both have to be brought up to modern platforms, be exposed to a bigger, wider audience. Those games are very beloved, and so I think people are ready to jump back into those worlds. Sometimes going back and playing those games on PS3 and 360, I love them, but hey, they're rough. Well, PlayStation 3 is rough. That's always the clarifier here in the context that we talk about. I think both those games have FPS boost and huge resolution bumps on Series X, so they're actually very playable on Xbox. PS3, we all know, that's our pride and joy, which is still struggling for some of those games. Now, in the same report, again from Jez Corden, writing for Windows Central, they briefly mention that Machine Games is likely working on Wolfenstein 3, but they don't really make that a big point in the article, so it's probably something that they're not too well sourced on. But after that report came out, we had another one from Kotaku where they followed up with their sources, and they do say that the game is indeed coming. So Wolfenstein 3 from Machine Games should be their next title, which that would be great. I mean, we had Youngblood in 2019, so it's already been a long time since a proper Wolfenstein game. 2 came out in 2017, I want to say. So, I mean, I'm ready for more Wolfenstein. They're very competent, enjoyable first-person shooter experiences. And they're not, they don't overstay their welcome, too. I mean, I think those are really great palate cleanser games where they're not doing anything really revolutionary, per se. They're just really fun to mess around with for 15-something hours, however long those campaigns are. They're never overly long, but I would love for Machine Games to go back to Wolfenstein, so that could be something to look forward to. Next up, I feel like we would be a little bit remiss to not mention the other really big AI headline from this past week, where it came from the Microsoft CEO, Satya Nadella, where they wrote this on SN Scratchpad. They did like a little blog post going into the new year talking about what's on the horizon, and naturally the post was about AI. And so they were saying that we've moved past discovery and now we're in widespread diffusion. The big quote getting shared around here is where he says, quote, We need to get beyond the arguments of slop versus sophistication and develop a new equilibrium in terms of our theory of the mind that accounts for humans being equipped with these new cognitive amplifier tools as we relate to each other. This is the product design question we need to debate and answer. He further explains that the technology needs to be a solution to the challenges of the people and the planet, and that the discovery process is going to be a messy one. And just to summarize it all, that's more or less where he's coming from. I always find it's important to provide the full context on what was said, because this is naturally something where, based on how this was phrased and written, where he's telling people to stop saying slop or stop calling AI slop. And like that was Merriam-Webster's word of the year, where slop is literally described as low effort digital content, usually made by AI, so it actually fits the bill perfectly. But, there's very clearly a huge pushback on, of course, Satya Nadella is going to be saying stuff like that as we go into 2026. And this is also in light of rumors that they're going to be doing more mass layoffs because of the AI costs internally that Microsoft is ramping up. With that in mind, I mean, what he's saying is very sort of by the books, sort of wider, good for the humanity sort of speech and preaching. Stuff like this usually comes off very pompous, and even if it's like somewhat like you can understand what he's saying and you can pick up what he's laying down, and it might even be somewhat agreeable. It's just nobody wants to hear you say this stuff. There's a lot of division going on right now because of AI, and the real on-the-ground use cases for it as we exist right now is that people are, there are a lot of folks that will use it in bad faith and make a lot of fake things, misleading things. It's leading to a lot of creatively bankrupt content that is being fed into the TikTok-brained machine, and it's an awful vicious cycle that it's completely earned the name of slop. So people don't really want to hear you say stuff like this, dude. You know what I'm saying? Like, especially a company with such a vested interest in AI being so widely adopted and accepted. Now, with all that said, it is time for Let's Talk Plus, the weekly Let's Talk PlayStation giveaway, where one of you can win a $10 PSN code. I would like to congratulate this viewer right here. I'll be contacting you very soon via email or X. And if you'd like to win a $10 PSN code, it is so simple. You can follow the link down below or scan the QR code, enter the Gleam giveaway, and supporting this channel a number of ways can gain you an entry, and I'll announce the winner next week, because I'm trying to help pay for your games. Those are all the stories from this past week that I wanted to talk about with you all, and our Tuesday video was our annual PlayStation predictions. I give 10 new predictions for the PlayStation business in 2026, and I grade myself from last year to see how well I did. With that in mind, we had Click R3 last night, so you can go check out our first Click R3 of 2026 as me and John get settled back into the year. And we probably have another regular upload on Tuesday as per usual. And I think that's pretty much it. So that concludes this week's episode of Let's Talk PlayStation. I'm Ryan Benecki. Thank you all so much for talking with me, and I will see you all next Friday.